Welcome, everyone, to 55 and 5, the only show on YouTube that talks about the 1955 Parkhurst Wrestling trading card set.
I'm back.
Cary's back. Cary has survived 2 rounds. We're going through all 121 cards in this beautiful trading card set that features the stars, the Hall of Famers, the lesser known.
A mere 118 to go, but this is fun. Let's do it.
We are chugging along here, and our first 2, Vern Gagne, Tex McKenzie, names that folks might know. This set is filled with a lot of Hall of Famers, a lot of stars. Eventually, we're going to get to some names that we don't quite know, and our goal here is not necessarily to stump Cary, but to get some memories from Cary about the first time seeing them live, seeing them in magazines. Of course, this is presented by Bisson Creative. Uncle Gunny, Captain Lou, back with us once again. So, Cary, 2, I don't want to say softballs. Vern Gagne is a softball. I think a lot of people know who he is. Tex McKenzie, we're getting a little harder. Are you nervous to talk about our next person in 5 minutes or less?
Yes, because I want to bring something up real quick. I was referred to in the last episode as a historian, and I made a joke about, well, that's another way to say the person is old. But what I was just thinking, geez, these cards came out a couple years before I was born. So the chance of me knowing these guys, it's a good thing I bought a lot of old wrestling magazines, but let's see what we got next.
And I got a safety net. So if Cary is ever stumped, I have a safety net right here with some information so that no one leaves here empty-handed. There's no prizes for Cary and I, but there is some knowledge for you. So who is next? I'm going to show this wrestler, this notable wrestler, to the crowd right here. For how colorful the Vern Gagne card and Tex McKenzie cards were, this one, not so much. It kind of looks like he's adjusting himself in the groin region, maybe. And we talked about the difference between the 54 set, the 55 set. 55 set, I think, is a little bigger. And it's got colorized backgrounds. They actually took a step backwards. They made Hans Schmidt a little darker. So, Cary, I'm going to set the clock for 5 minutes. I do this because Cary and I have a tendency to talk quite a bit, and we want to give these history lessons in 5 minutes or less. So I've started the clock at 5 minutes. And Cary, please tell us 55 and 5 about Hans Schmidt.
Well, here is a man I never got to see live. Hopefully in your notes, we'll know when he retired. Mm-hmm. But I know that he was a huge star in the, this is just from my knowledge from the wrestling magazines, and also thanks to some of my posters, because staring across the room, there's Hans Schmidt at Madison Square Garden. Wow. That's probably a 1960 or 61 poster against former NWA champion Pat O'Connor. Right. But Hans Schmidt, after World War II, there were many German bad guys. Right. It was, just like they had the Japanese bad guys. Sure. So that was Hans Schmidt's gimmick.
Do you know where he was born?
I was just going to say, I don't ever remember hearing that wasn't his name.
Right. He was born in Quebec, not his real name.
Okay.
But he was born in Quebec, Canada. He was a rule breaker, one of the earliest adopters of the pile driver, one of the first folks to use it on TV, at least. And he became a star kind of at the tail end of the Dumont run.
I'm going to interrupt you and put myself on the line here. Sure. I'm going to guess that he retired probably around the time I started watching wrestling, which was 1966.
Well, we'll take it to the judges here. Hans Schmidt, Canadian professional wrestler, famous in the 50s and 60s, and retired in 1976.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so he was in there.
Ooh, I was off.
Yeah, he began in the 50s and retired in 1976, actually 1949. So it's kind of incredible. And interesting with Hans Schmidt is that while other wrestlers, including Count Karl von Hess, would adapt swastika imagery, would adapt the goose steps in really some distasteful and disrespectful measures to get heat, garner, anger from the crowd, Hans Schmidt was one of the first German, personas. He drew a line. He would not adopt the swastika, would not adopt the goose steps. He thought that went a little too far.
Well, in your notes,
yes.
Can you fill me in on where he was between 66 and 76?
So he was all over the place. He was the Teuton Terror And not tootin' as in farting, tootin' as in, I believe that's a region of Germany, Teuton. And he was in Chicago, Milwaukee, Toronto. He had a really interesting moment against Buddy Rogers, where Buddy Rogers was, of course, a notorious rule breaker and somebody the fans did not like for majority of his early career. And just by stepping in the ring with him, he essentially turned Buddy Rogers into a good guy. Hans Schmidt was that hated. So he was all over the place for a while. And we talked about with Vern Gagne, that NWA United States Championship, that early run of it. He had actually held that title, I believe, 2 or 3 folks after Vern Gagne in 57. So...
Well, I'm going to do some research on my own after this because I just don't think he was, he might have retired in 76, but I'm going to have to look up to see, I don't remember him in any particular territories in the late 60s and 70s. In other words, I would know that Tex McKenzie, he wrestled in Oklahoma and then blah, blah, blah. I don't have any recollection about Hans Schmidt.
Yeah, Hans Schmidt, he appears to be somebody that was very popular as a bad guy, or at least very notable, I should say, as a bad guy. Used the backbreaker, used some pretty innovative moves that weren't seen on television to that point, the backbreaker and the pile driver. So those are some of his legacy. So Hans Schmidt, a very interesting character. Cary, 53 seconds remaining. So we did 4 minutes, 7 seconds on this history lesson about Hans Schmidt. Maybe we could talk about him and Carl von Hess on Last Stop Penn Station. We can maybe do a comparison or talk about some great posters you have.
Well, you have me confounded here. Once again, I'm going to have to research because if Hans Schmidt worked during the late 60s and 70s, I want to see where it was because it must have been few and far between. That's my guess. I'll have to ask Kevin Sullivan.
Or maybe these cards are from Canada. Maybe it was up in Canada and it wasn't covered as much down here. Maybe Quebec, Toronto. We'll look it up. We'll bring you an update on the next episode of 55 and 5. So that's been our history lesson for today. It's been about Hans Schmidt. We'd like to thank Uncle Gunny, Captain Lou Albano, Bisson Creative, Lamb Chop, who's been walking around here. And we invite you to join us next time on 55 and 5, where we only have 118 more cards to go. So thanks, everybody.